Okay, where should your topic sentence appear in a paragraph? I will give you the honest answer, and then I'll give you my answer. The honest answer is that there really is no particular place where the topic sentence has to appear. Usually, it will either appear as the first sentence or the last sentence of a paragraph. Now, in terms of what I'm looking for from your essays, your topic sentences will always be the first sentence of a paragraph. Again, the same reason why I asked that your thesis statement be the last sentence of your introduction. I'm looking to evaluate your ability to write topic sentences, which means I need to easily identify where they're supposed to be and then look at that sentence and be able to identify whether it is effective or not. So if I look at the first sentence of your paragraph and I don't see a topic sentence, or I see a sentence that is not focused or unclear, then I know how to evaluate it. So remember, in this class, your topic sentence will always be the first sentence of a paragraph. Okay, now we move on to paragraph development, which is in many respects the meat and potatoes of a paragraph. It's where you either succeed or fail in convincing the reader that the point you're making in your topic sentence has validity. It's not necessarily a matter about right or wrong, but rather about whether it's valid, meaning that there is a reason to accept the claim made in the topic sentence, or it's invalid. There is no particular reason to accept the claim that's made. So, as the book says, the information in each paragraph must adequately explain, exemplify, meaning to use example, define, or in some other way support your topic sentence. Now, it is essential that your supporting evidence be specific. That's why we begin with the exemplification essay, because using examples is one of the most effective and easiest ways to support a topic sentence. If you can give me an example of something, and we've already seen some examples earlier in the body paragraph in slide 8, where we saw examples of the different services that were offered by the Learning Center. Right, details. These things have a better chance of convincing the reader. I would argue that's the only chance you have. As the slide says here, vague generalities or repetitious ideas are not convincing. You have to move from the general to the specific. The topic sentence itself is a fairly general statement that needs to be supported with something hard and clear. Okay, here's an example of a topic sentence that is not supported by examples. Although he was an outlaw, Jesse James, in red, so it's the subject, was considered a Robin Hood figure in my hometown. The purple indicates, obviously, the controlling idea. There's nothing wrong with this topic sentence. It's a fine topic sentence. What we're expecting, of course, is to see ways in which Jesse James was a Robin Hood figure, why people would think he was. So here's what the writer does. He used to be generous to the poor, and he did many good deeds, not just robberies. That's it. Well, I don't see that. Okay? Do you see it? Ask yourself that question. What does it mean to be generous to the poor? How was he generous to the poor? What good deeds? What did he do that was good? Just telling me that this is the case is not convincing. You have to show me. And that's what evidence does. It shows. Now, here's the same topic sentence, but not the same paragraph. And you'll notice the blue in this paragraph and in paragraphs that on slides that follow will indicate supporting evidence or supporting details or examples. Okay? And so here's what we have here, the same topic sentence. Although he was an outlaw, Jesse James was considered a Robin Hood figure in my hometown in Missouri. Jesse and his gang chose my hometown as a hiding place and they set out immediately to make friends with the local people. Now that's still general. What we need to do is to see what they did to make friends with the local people. So, here we get it. Every Christmas for 4 years, the legend goes, he dumped bags of toys on the doorsteps of poor children. Okay, that seems like a very nice thing to do. The parents knew that the toys were bought with money stolen from richer people, but they were grateful anyway. Notice again, it's a specific Robin Hood action. Okay, taking from the rich and giving to the poor. In this case, poor children, where he used the money from rich people to buy the toys to give them. Another example. On 3 occasions, Jesse gave groceries to the dozen neediest families. Again, neediest implies poor. He's getting the money from the rich. It is another specific Robin Hood action. He seemed to know when times were toughest, and once he supposedly held up a stage to pay for an old man's operation. That's a final, specific Robin Hood action. In my hometown, some people still sing the praises of Jesse James, the outlaw who wasn't all bad. Again, a concluding statement that restates the topic sentence without repeating the topic sentence. Notice how different this paragraph is. Notice how much blue is here. That's what I'm looking for, and that's what any professor, or really anybody who's reading an essay or a report or any kind of document that is purporting to convey information. That's what they're looking for. The specific information that supports the claim that's made in the topic sentence. All right, I'm often asked by students, especially those right out of high school, how long should a paragraph be? Well, there is no right answer for that. As the quote here says, there is no set length or prescribed number of lines or sentences for any of your paragraphs. That is true. It does say avoid the 1 or 2 sentence paragraphs frequently seen in newspapers or magazine articles, and that's obvious. Newspaper writing is not the same kind of writing that you're doing. It has a different purpose, a different focus. Please disregard newspaper writing in general. If your paragraph is growing far too long, whatever that might mean, look for a logical place to divide your information and start a new paragraph. So let me give you my answer to this question about how long should a paragraph be. It should be long enough. What does that mean? Well, you tell me. You're the writer. You know what it is that you're trying to communicate. You should be developing an eye to understand what an audience is looking for in your essays and in your body paragraphs. So I'm not giving you a specific length. All I will tell you is if your paragraph is not developed, that it's not developed, that it does not contain enough information, enough specific information to support the topic sentence that you have placed at the beginning of the paragraph. So, now I'm not asking you to write a lot. My experience has been that students who write, let's say, 6-page papers, really are writing 6-page papers because they don't know what the hell they want to say. They are hoping that if they write enough, at some point, somewhere in the essay, they're going to say something that they should say. That is not the way to write an essay. You need to know before you ever sit down to start writing what it is you've got to do, and you have to come up with the best way to do it. So, you need to be thorough. You need to be complete. That is your focus, not the number of sentences. And by the way, I don't want to hear anybody tell me, well, my teacher told me a paragraph had to be 5 sentences long. That's a lie. It's just as much a lie as when you've been told, and most of you have, by your teachers in high school or in junior high, that you can't begin a sentence with because. And I believe we've already covered this in an earlier lecture. You can. Okay? So, At any rate, paragraphs need to be as long as they need to be, and it is your responsibility as the writer to determine how long that must be. A far more important issue than paragraph length is paragraph unity. And here we're moving into what makes a good paragraph, aside from the amount of detail that's included in the paragraph. There are two things that we want to discuss now. One is unity, and the other, which we'll get to in a moment, is coherence. Okay, so unity is very simple. Everything in the paragraph has to conform to or relate to the subject and the controlling idea of the paragraph. And of course, I'm using the book's term main idea. It's the same thing. Main idea, controlling idea. Every sentence has to relate to it. You can't stray from the subject. You can't stray from the controlling idea. It's the same with the thesis statement as we talked about last week. Again, the paragraph must stick to its announced subject. It must not drift away into another discussion. And I'll give you an example in a little bit that demonstrates a paragraph that lacks subject unity, or that lacks unity in general. Okay. All right, I've included these two views of the great Frank Lloyd Wright's Robie House in Chicago. It was built between 1908 and 1910. It's one of the revolutionary architectural achievements of the first half of the 20th century. Frank Lloyd Wright, the first great American architect, and some would argue still the great American architect. It's a beautiful building, as you can see, and I could use the building as kind of a metaphor for how to structure a paragraph or an essay, how each part in some way is unified with the other parts of it, and how all the parts contribute to the overall effect of the building. But actually, the reason why I have these buildings here, and I hope you're looking at them as I'm talking, is I want to make a point above and beyond the idea of paragraph unity. In the next slide, we're going to read a paragraph about Frank Lloyd Wright's Prairie House design, and Robie House is one of these fine examples of that particular phase in the architect's career. So it's important, though, the paragraph is not going to have the same effect on you as it would if you saw the house that exemplifies, that is an example of this particular style. So look at it very closely, and then notice how, when we move to the next slide, so we look at the paragraph, how ably, through the use of specific detail, the writer is able to translate the image of a house like this into words that can then be translated by the reader into an image of a house like this, which is, of course, the entire point of writing. Okay, so here's the paragraph I was talking about, and you'll notice, and I want you to pay attention, how all of the details, those sections in blue, support the subject, Frank Lloyd Wright, and the controlling idea, believe that his houses should blend naturally with their building sites. Okay, and so what we want to understand is how this particular design that he worked with corresponds to the natural surroundings of the building. So, point one. Consequently, notice the transitional expression indicating a result. Right? He wanted this, and so the result is that he designed several prairie houses whose long, low lines echoed the flat earth plain. And if you think back to the image of the house, and You can always go back to the slide if you want to. That is exactly the kind of structure that we see there. It's in many respects flat. It contains a lot of low and long lines. Built of brick, stone, and natural wood, which we saw in the example, the houses shared a similar texture with their background. Large windows, and there are examples of that if you were to go back and look at it. Large windows were often used to blend the interior and exterior of the houses, meaning that you had a lot of the outdoors coming in through these large windows. Right, also, again, another transition indicating the continuation of a sequence. Right, also punctuated the lines and spaces of the house with greenery and planters to further make the building look like a part of nature. All of these things, and I don't know if you noticed the greenery, but I made sure to get a picture that did have the greenery in Roby House. All of these details, from 2 to 5, each one of these sentences, in some way expounds on the idea of houses blending naturally with their building sites. This then, though short, is a very clear and very full paragraph because the writer has selected the details effectively and presented them economically. I don't think it's enough to show you a positive example of paragraph unity. In other words, I don't think that necessarily showing you a paragraph in which everything is unified makes as much an impression on you as to then juxtapose it with a paragraph that is not unified. And so here is one. Note, of course, the topic sentence, and there's nothing wrong with it. Subject is I, controlling idea, have always been a very messy person. Now, I've underlined a very messy person because that's really the idea that the writer is trying to get across in this paragraph. So let's begin by going through what the writer has to say about being messy. As a child, I was a pack rat, saving every little piece of insignificant paper that I thought might be important when I grew up. Okay, that sounds like a messy person. As a teenager, I filled my pockets with remnants of basketball tickets, hall passes, gum wrappers, and other important articles from my high school education. Okay, that is another example of being messy. As a college student, I became a boxer, not a fighter, but someone who can't throw anything away, and therefore it winds up in a box in my closet. Okay, we're seeing so far details that show somebody who collects a lot of junk, and this junk creates mess. All right, then we go to something else. But my engagement has changed everything. I'm really pleased with the new stage in my life, and I owe it all to my fiancée. Okay, let me stop for a second. What does engagement and what does new stage and fiancé have to do with being a very messy person? Nothing. Let's continue. My overall outlook on life has changed because of his influence on me. That has nothing to do with being a very messy person. I'm neater. Okay, I understand. You're neater, but that's not what this paragraph is supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be about how you became a neater person. It's supposed to be about how you have always been a very messy person. I'm neater, much more cheerful. That has nothing to do with being a messy person. And I'm even getting places on time like I never did before. That's a whole different topic. It's truly amazing what love can do. And you see what I've written down there? WTF. Because that's how I feel having finished this paragraph. It is pointless. This paragraph is a disaster. It is a failure. Because the writer did not stick to the controlling idea of a very messy person and wound up spinning off into some rhapsody about her fiancé and how amazing love is. That's not what you're supposed to be writing in this paragraph. You're supposed to be writing about being a messy person. So here now I think you can see, especially in juxtaposition with the previous paragraph, how this paragraph lacks unity and the previous paragraph that focused only on details that explained Frank Lloyd Wright's architectural impulses, how this one lacks unity and the previous one is unified.